The run game for the Dallas Cowboys is finally starting to heat up in practice. What did Landon see out in Oxnard? All that and more. This episode of Locked On Cowboys Podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first and now your second listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosier. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosier. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can get some of his great insights and great nuggets out in Oxnard, California. He's actually back now. But Landon, how did you enjoy this week in training camp?
It was great. Sometimes you go out there and you feel like there's not a lot great to report on. And some years that you go out there and it's kind of up and down. I feel like for the most part, the practices all across the board were very well spirited. They've seemed very crisp. Both sides kind of giving it to each other back and forth. There isn't one side kind of just fully dominating, except at different points when it felt appropriate. But I think that this is, as I think right now, what you do is you're kind of checking boxes, right? You're seeing that your team has what you need to go into the regular season. And as it stands right now, this looks like a very, very good football team as we, just go into the first part of August.
We are in training camp. We're in the hype part of the season, right? Everybody's excited. Most importantly, you in the best shape of your life? Because everybody else on Twitter is, right? At least what I've seen from all these other teams.
I'm definitely not in the best shape of my life. I've been eating a lot of fast food and driving a lot and trying to get, and haven't had a wonderful home cooked meal in a long time. So,
glad to be home.
In terrible shape. Yeah, glad to be home.
All right, let's get to practice. So this was, I believe, the Cowboys' third or fourth padded practices. They're all starting to start to run together at this point, but
this is third. Yeah,
seems like the running game was off to a really good start today. What did you see on the field?
Yeah, I think mostly once you started to get the ones in there for a while. Look, I think it's tough sledding down roster because the defensive line depth is so good, and we'll talk about some specific guys a little bit later in the show. But I think that the offensive line and the second team still really struggling to make hay. But when the first team got both Terrence Steele and Tyron Smith in at the same time, and simply we're just missing Zach Martin, they were able to kind of start moving bodies a little bit. You started to see the seams open up a little bit more. You started to see guys like Ronald Jones, who I actually mentioned as not having kind of shown some things, were able to kind of get through and break open some big runs and that sort of thing. And it was enough to the point that Dak later on in practice, in some of these 9-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills, was able to kind of open things up with the play action a lot more because they were actually concerned and actually biting a lot more on the run. So it does seem that, when they have their kind of starting personnel a little bit, the running game is starting to kind of come together a little bit. When they have the backups in, it's still a struggle, especially
which is expected.
Look, the guy when Let's Go is your first team offensive tackle. Bostic is going to end up being one of your second team or, guys that rotates in. And whenever he's going against either Sam Williams or Dante Fowler, that's a tough matchup for those guys. So
you've been going to these training camps for years now. When have you ever seen a second string offensive line really move people in the run game? Like, it just takes, first of all, there's not a lot of quality offensive linemen in the league. And it takes those guys a long time to get any kind of continuity. And when you're constantly changing guys in and out, it's really hard for that second unit to make some hay on the ground.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you're a young player trying to make the roster, and the guy across from you is a valued third rusher on this team, is a veteran defensive end who's, was a former number 3 overall pick, and the other guy's a second round pick. So the quality of players sometimes in these, second team and third team reps, it's tough. The matchups, a little bit, but that's also how those young guys get better. So it's good to see them at least putting in the effort and moving the ball a little bit.
You mentioned Dak Prescott. We have to at least talk about him. Again, if you just watch practices from Twitter, you would swear that Dak had like a terrible, terrible, terrible day. But what did you see on the field?
There was some snap exchange issues for sure that Dak was experiencing with Farniak was in the center, which broke my heart. And then I think there was an underthrown ball when he was under duress that was intercepted. But I mean, outside of that, I thought Dak was incredible. It was very crisp. Mostly what they were working on today was run game and run game adjacent kind of stuff. So it was a lot of getting guys in the right looks. And then the throwing aspect came on play action. So many of the throws that we saw, especially in the 9 and 7 stuff, was out of play action. So and Dak was just dicing up the defense, and specifically got one really good one right down the middle of the seam with CeeDee Lamb and a couple outside to the tight end. So I think for the most part, Dak looked great. It was mostly a run. A game kind of focused practice early in the practice, especially. So there weren't a ton of throws for him, honestly.
We got a question here. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible if they pop up here on YouTube. This one is Semifahoku on the 53-man roster going into week 1. He was back in practice. We'll get you a full injury update later on in the show. But the one interception that you mentioned was on an underthrown pass to Fahoku that was covered by Stephon Gilmore. Fahoku did not do a great job of kind of fighting back for the ball. But what did you see from the Cowboys' third-year receiver?
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see him back on the field. I think I did see him make a nice contested catch on the outside on one of the reps that he was in on. But he has not kind of been making huge splash plays the way it seems like he was at times last year. I mean, he just got back, so we'll give him.
It's his first practice back. I give him a little bit of a.
But I mean, we may give him a little bit of a break, but I'll tell you this: the guys that are nipping at his heels right now are certainly not, because we'll talk about some of the drumbeat stuff a little bit later, but Jalen Brooks, again, going out and having a really incredible practice and kind of showing, having a really big catch and just showing that he belongs. The drumbeat continues with guys like that. So Semifahoku's still got to kind of work his way in and show that he belongs on the 53-man roster at this point.
Next question from John. How did the tight ends look run blocking? You mentioned this was a running practice. How did they fare?
I think it was a little bit up and down. It depended on the guy as well. I think when you see Ferguson out there, he looks pretty good for the most part, though he usually has a pretty tough blocking assignment because often it's Parsons or someone like that. So I think for the most part, they're looking good. It's very early days. I will say this, that I do think that the down roster tight ends blocking are doing probably a better job on their assignments, it seems, than some of the down roster, like, offensive tackles or guards or something, or the stuff. Princeton fan, I mentioned him the other day in kind of a negative light. I thought that I saw a couple different reps where he really had some nice, reps against defensive ends and kind of just sealing guys off. So there you go, Marcus. There's your positive
Princeton fan news. That's what we wanted to hear.
That's right.
Let's get to another question. Just all these coming in. This one from Justin. Does Tyler Smith appear comfortable at guard? Can you notice an improvement to his overall ability?
I mean, he looks stronger.
How is that possible?
I don't know. I mean, the reps that you get to see against him and Mozzie Smith are just like, it's ridiculous. The power there. And they have to be kind of careful, because if either one of them gets even a little bit off balance, it's almost like sumo wrestlers, right? They're just like, they can just toss you. He looks extremely comfortable at guard. He doesn't seem to have any problems kind of moving around and operating that level. I mean, I think, having all that time, at training camp and in OTAs for the previous season, last year's rookie year, I think has helped him a lot. Yeah. And he certainly looks comfortable to me playing right now. And it looks good. I mean, he's moving bodies, and he's had a good camp, very good camp.
We're going to answer some more of your Twitter questions, or Twitter and YouTube questions. So please send them into us. But I want to talk about the defensive tackles, because it seems like a couple of those guys had a really, really big day. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It is so easy to create a job post on LinkedIn, all you have to do is add your job and then the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every day or so, tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about some of the biggest winners and some of the drum beats that we've heard all week through camp, not just from Thursday's practice. So make sure you tune in for that. Landon, let's talk about the defensive tackles because it seems like Jonathan Hankins had himself a day.
Yeah, and he wasn't alone, honestly, but Hankins certainly was the headliner as far as today. He had a couple of different tackles for loss, was moving people, was holding them up. Like I said, the run game was able to kind of get on track a little bit as practice went on, which it's taken a while. But early on in practice, you saw certainly a lot of movement going the wrong way, and it was Hankins that was doing it. And they certainly weren't afraid in this practice to put both Hankins and Mazi Smith next to each other and kind of have this huge 1,000-pound seeming little blob of humanity in the middle of the defense. And it was effective. It was hard to move those guys. And even more than that, which is interesting, guys like Hankins, and we have to throw this other guy's name in here, Quinton Bohanna, who had a really nice day as well, was able to get off blocks and get in the backfield and not just, be a hold up and mix it up kind of nose tackle who's kind of clogging everything up in the middle, actually getting off blocks, getting into the backfield, creating havoc, actually getting tackles for losses. It was a really good day for the defense tackles. And I have to mention again, Osa Digizua also had a really big tackle for loss. I mean, you want to talk about drum beats. This is a guy who's on his own level of drum beat, a drum beat towards a Pro Bowl type season. So that's someone to keep in mind as well.
I think tomorrow when we do our show on some of the biggest winners throughout the week, I think Osa Digizua's name is going to appear on there. But it's awesome to see Hankins having a strong practice because, yes, Mazi Smith is going to help the run game, but they're going to need both of those guys. They're going to have to use them to help stop the run. Both those guys there's massive defensive tackles, so you don't want to have their snaps get too high as the season goes on. It's not even going to be surprising to me if they have Bohanna, Hankins, and Mazi Smith all on this team, all on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, Bohanna's had his best camp without a doubt so far. We haven't really mentioned his name a lot just because, it's tough at times because the especially in the offensive interior that deep, he's shown a lot of stuff, but it's tough for us to kind of parse exactly how good it really is considering the quality of the opponent. But him doing stuff like this, like getting off blocks, showing extension, getting in the backfield and being disruptive in that way, that's a new thing for him, Bohanna. And it looks like he's really kind of taken that on.
And one of the names that we haven't mentioned, I know we haven't at all during training camp so far, is Neville Gallimore. Have you seen anything from him so far in camp?
I mean, I think I wouldn't call what he's been doing so far as negative. I mean, I think he's had an up and down camp, and I think he's been okay. But I've seen this from him before, and so I don't necessarily want to put him, he is seemingly different than a lot of these other nose tackles because
he's an up the field guy.
He's an up the field guy, but he's a bigger guy than Osa is. But he's not,
he's not a run defender.
He's not a run defender, and he's not, Bohanna sized or any of those guys. So he is unique in that sense. And I guess the closest guy to him is Osa, and then the next closest guy is probably Chauncey Golston. And
exactly.
it's weird. So I think that we'll see. That'll probably all sort itself out. I don't know that he's really done anything to make me want him over Bohanna or certainly not Golston or any of those guys. So
Doesn't it
we'll
feel
see.
like Gallimore is going to get a ton of run in the preseason? Like the Cowboys are going to try to showcase him to a team, maybe like the Browns who are playing tonight, that could really use some more defensive tackle help. I just don't know if Gallimore has a spot on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cowboys are definitely going to be a team that people are going to be phone calling for defensive
Yeah.
linemen in general. So it makes sense that if you're looking to keep the other guys healthy and maybe get something for Gallimore, he will be heavily featured in these preseason games.
All right, let's run through some more questions here on YouTube.
Yeah.
This one from Matthew. How has Jalen Tolbert looked the last couple of days?
Drumbeat guy again continues to have a good practice. I don't think I saw him specifically, and I haven't, to be straightforward with y'all, I haven't caught up on the Twitter aspect of today's practice necessarily. I just got in, so I didn't necessarily see him make a big play, but I saw him make several routine plays, and frankly, I mean, again, from what we're talking about, where he's come from, for him to just kind of continue to stack solid days, even if it's not spectacular today, that's fine. That's good. That counts as a drum beat. What we're looking for, what we're trying to avoid are stumbles. What we're looking forward to try to avoid is steps back.
Let's get to another one. This one about Austin Richards, who we talked about a little bit on, I believe it was yesterday's show.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you would like to see him get more second team reps. Did you see anything positive from him today?
I didn't notice him specifically. I've done, like, obviously I watched practice, and then I've done at least twice over with my video before we came in to record. But I need to kind of go back and see if I can specifically find him in some of these reps. He's been working with the third team for the most part. I didn't see if he got any kind of promotion today.
He's a guy that just needs a lot of reps in the preseason, I would
assume.
assume.
It's funny. I'll tell you this: like, I definitely notice third team offensive linemen in these watch throughs, but in a negative way. Like, the guys that stick out my name in kind of a negative way, like, are TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman, who I both think had really awful days, and Farniak I didn't necessarily block terribly, but had 2 really bad snaps. So the fact that he's not on that list of off the second and third team offensive linemen that I noticed in a negative way, I mean, again, that shows growth. I again would like to see him get some second team reps, because I really do think that would be good for him.
Next one from Nate. How has Overshawn and the other depth linebackers looked?
Nate, I'm so glad you asked, because before we got into the 9 and 7 and some of the other, before, in the earlier part of the practice, after special teams, they break apart into like offensive line and defensive line school. The linebackers and the safeties kind of go to their own spots, and cornerbacks, and they all work their own thing. They were doing a drill where they had the linebackers underneath a covering, basically. Mobile on. I think you guys have seen it. And basically what it does is that makes sure that the linebackers stay in a kind of squatted position, and they have to come out from underneath the covering and then get onto a sled, lift, separate,
to explode,
and
right?
Tackle. Yeah. It's basically measuring hip explosion in your take on, and they had all these linebackers going through. I couldn't get over, and I actually was talking to a couple of other people that were sitting next to me. I couldn't get over how much power Overshown was creating in this sled. I mean, to the point where he was lifting it off the ground completely. There were other guys that were bigger than him that were hitting it, and it was moving, it was getting up, but he's lifting it up off the ground and separating it and getting to the tackle, and it just showed a level of hip explosion that I wasn't aware was part of his game. And as this has gone on, this whole training camp thing, I'm starting to see it a lot more with Overshawn than I did with the video, because I think you get fooled by the size. He has linebacker traits, linebacker power. He's not 245, 250 pounds. He's lighter than that. He's a smaller kind of, he looks closer to a Mukwamu than he does a Leighton Vander Esch, that's for sure. But he has the requisite power. He's physical in a way that is rare for a guy that size. And I've already noticed him several times in these run fit drills, knifing in the backfield and making tackles for losses. So he definitely clearly has the kind of instincts that you want to see on the second level. he may be a little bit further along than I was anticipating, to be honest.
I mean, the Cowboys are not counting on him to be linebacker 1 or linebacker 2, and maybe not even linebacker 3, but it would, I guess, from what you're saying, maybe there's a chance that he rises up this depth chart faster than any of us think. And man, wouldn't that be quite a surprise if the Cowboys can get another one of these really athletic and powerful linebackers on day 2? Landon, let's answer some more YouTube questions. So send them in. We're also going to give you an injury update next. This episode is brought to you by Underdog. August is here, and you know what that means. It is the official start of fantasy football. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy. All you do is one live snake draft, no waivers, no trades. Underdog sets your best lineup every single week. Now you can try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania Tournament. The largest fantasy football contest of all time is back, and it's even bigger, with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July. So don't wait around. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That is Underdog Fantasy promo code LOCKEDON. We absolutely love Underdog. I play it every single day. I love doing the drafts. They are so much fun. Just jump in one of the 12-team best ball leagues. They're an absolute blast. But make sure you use our promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. All right, we are back here on YouTube answering your questions. We're going to get to a couple of them in just a second. But Lane, let's do some injury stuff. We mentioned Semifahoku back in practice. You mentioned that Israel Makamu, who was out with a hamstring injury last week. He was either back fully at practice or at least working back, correct?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a more accurate report here, but I definitely saw him in pads, and I was working with individual stuff. What I didn't see was if he made it into team and 9-on-7 stuff. That's what I'm not sure of, but he's clearly closer to being on his way back. I can also report that Luke Schoonemaker was on the cords, but now he's in pads doing cords, and on top of that, even beyond that, he was in pads running routes, catching passes during practice. So I would not at all be surprised if he's not at practice Saturday. I wouldn't be shocked if he was at practice Monday. So look for Schoonemaker to be making his way back. Sam Williams was definitely all the way back. He had a really good practice. I noticed today. Had a couple of different run fits that were really, really nice, including a tackle for loss.
I wonder what's going on there because he left yesterday's practice. I guess it was, they had a walkthrough yesterday. He left early. I wonder if it's just like a nagging thing more so than an injury.
You know, like I mentioned, when I saw him walk off, I noticed him leaving the drill, right? Like, so it was, and you notice that they separate out. And when you see guys like walking off, it's very easy to see because they look out of place. They're walking in spots where no one else is walking. And I saw him walk off. And as he was walking off, he stopped to talk to somebody, and it wasn't a trainer or someone related to that. So to me, like that's like, go get that checked out, kind of situation. Not like I'm in imminent pain. Please give me pain relief from my
go help me
injury.
I'm trying to think if there's any other injury stuff. Donovan Wilson, I've got to assume the Cowboys are going to be really careful here. He's probably not going to be even rehabbing for another. What do you think? 3 weeks?
He's done. So? He's done for Oxnard. I would say.
I would assume
without a doubt. We've only got what is it, like 7 or 8 more practices here, so I can't imagine that he's going to do anything here. He may. I mean, I haven't even seen him on the field, so I don't know. I don't want to report.
He'll probably
even be in Dallas. Honestly,
yeah, it would shock me. Another question from Nate: have any of the undrafted free agents impressed?
Guess who got some carries with the ones today?
Was it our guy Hunter Lepke?
It was our guy Hunter Lepke. He definitely did. I've seen him a couple different times before. He's starting to get more play. Let's see who else undrafted free agents.
I need to ask you about David Durden, the 25-year-old rookie who is prospect. We haven't really seen any clips or anything of him. Have you noticed him at all?
Yeah, I've noticed him a couple different times early on. I think he had a kind of a high profile drop in the sense that he had gotten past everybody and was wide open and dropped it. But the couple of different times I've seen him making some catches here and there, he's been targeted and he's looked good. I mean, I think he's it's a step up for him.
He's
for sure.
he's a practice squad guy. Like that's
for sure
what he is.
But he definitely has the requisite speed and athleticism there. There's also one more guy that I forgot to mention earlier that I'd like to throw in here real quick, if that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wanye Thomas is continued. Again, had a really nice practice today. I saw him with a super awesome breakup against Ferguson on an out route where he just broke on the ball perfectly. He's physical. He's loud. He's confident. I think that the rest of the defense really likes him a lot too. So he's another guy.
It doesn't seem like a fluke, right? Like
no,
it's not just one
Drumbeat.
practice. Yeah,
I mean, him and Brooks, honestly, to me, are the guys that, like, you're talking about the unknown names of their sides of the ball that could, make a surprise. Those are the two guys that continually are making plays. Those two guys have made plays every single day we've been out here.
I want to talk about Jalen Brooks, but we're going to save it for tomorrow's show. So this way you get a little bit of a tease. So you guys need to come back and listen to tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I want to save him because I want to talk about his role on the 53-man roster, where he's at on the depth chart. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow. Go check out our show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. We are free and available on all platforms. Go check out the podcast. Landon, you and I are back to just one episode a week next week. But the good news, we have a preseason game to cover next week. So we'll be getting you ready for that. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. We'll see you guys next time.